All right. I'm here once again with, I think this is episode 3 of the Due Diligence podcast or YouTube. I don't know. So far, it's just been video, but I'll probably push it out to audio at some point. Anyways, I'm here with the fantastic McSherry.
Hello.
Yeah, hey. And I think I'm going to start out, like, there's so many things I want to talk to you about, but I think it's best if I stop talking and let you introduce yourself. What you do, what drives you, and then we can go from there.
Oh God, what drives me? All right, we'll start with what I do, and then we'll move on from there. So my name is McSherry. My pronouns are she, they, and I am an international business and life guide, speaker, author, and podcast host. And I've been calling it my joie de vivre, is to help inspired entrepreneurs to honor their lives and be the architect of their success. And I do that by utilizing a spiritual tool called human design, which I know you are well versed in combination and partnerships with traditional business development tools. I've been kind of on this, I don't know, warpath, I guess, since this year, especially of really helping entrepreneurs pull away from this very lemming style, systematic, capitalistic, insert every adjective here, into bringing us back to the beauty and of individualism in entrepreneurship and how our uniqueness is what makes us quote unquote successful. And it's not about, the 5 foundational framework. It is really about connecting to who you are, understanding how you want to bring this to life. And then from there, really choosing the best resources that amplify that. So yeah, I live in Chicago, Illinois, in the city. For those of you who are in Chicago, get that joke. And yeah, I'm excited to be here. I'm excited just to sit and chat with you.
Cool. Well, okay, and so of course my head just went in 17 different directions. So I'm gonna comment on the first thing you said. You live in Chicago, Illinois.
Yeah.
You were specific about that. So I just want to. So my experience, because I have a business called Rockstar Bingo, we do music bingo, and it turns out, like, after 2 years of doing it, I can see where it's popular. And one of the places that it's particularly popular is Illinois. But all the hosts make a point of saying, "I live in Illinois, but not Chicago."
Yeah.
And they make up, like, there is a real kind of like us versus them thing that has come through about a dozen people. And
yeah.
let's just start with that. Why does
so
everyone...
I don't know if it's an us versus them thing. It is definitely, I will say, I've lived in Chicago for 17 years. I now talk like them. Like, it's my home. I will be here till the day I die. And it's the longest I've lived anywhere in my entire life. So it's definitely home. And I will say that what drives me nuts, and I think a lot of people in the city of Chicago agree, is when people live in the suburbs outside and say, "Oh, I live in Chicago." Like, "Oh, where?" Like, I'm thinking neighborhood, like, give me a neighborhood. I live in Andersonville. They go, "Oh, I live in, Vernon Hills." I'm like, "That's an hour and a half west from Chicago." Like, that's not, no. And I do believe, because I live in a city, obviously I'm in the day to day. I'm very aware of what is talked about about the city of Chicago. And I think the suburbanites kind of prescribe to that of, oh, this is a dangerous place to live. It's dirty. It's violent. It's all of these things. Like I said, I've been in the city for 17 years. I'm raising my son here. He goes to a Chicago public school. And I think that's almost another thing of like disrupting this outlook or this like glossing over of, oh, isn't it like, didn't 6 people get murdered there? It's like, well, didn't 6 people get murdered everywhere? Like, it's just everybody just has different perceptions of what Chicago is, depending if you actually live in the city versus you live in the burbs and never really set foot in a city.
Okay, so that's interesting. Yeah, I think of Chicago as kind of violence because that's kind of some of the reputation it has. But I think it's really cool that, like, such a bright light like yourself is committed to staying there. Like, because the other thing I feel like I've heard is, like, Chicago is one of the more depressed places. Like there's just a heaviness to the energy there. So I think it's pretty awesome that you're there as this bright light and
That's it. Well,
focus.
I think a part of that comes from the weather.
Sure.
Like our winters kind of suck. I think I appreciated spending a lot of my childhood and early childhood and teens in Arizona and having no seasons, and originally
Mhm.
from Colorado where you can experience all seasons in one day. Um, so I really enjoy the seasons. Yes, the winter can tend to get long, but I also I mean, I have an out. I get to go to Arizona in December and I get to go again in April. So I think it really depends on, the situation and if you have the means and the privilege to be able to get outside of the city, especially during those winter months. But honestly, I think it's really about when you find your neighborhood, because all the neighborhoods are different, and that's one of the things I love about Chicago. I've been here 17 years, and I'm still surprised by different neighborhoods, different restaurants, different areas of the city. I also don't have a car, so I'm very limited to the public transit system and my bike. Um, but I love that there's always something new, and you do find different energies in different neighborhoods. My neighborhood, Andersonville, is a predominantly queer and Latino neighborhood. Very artsy, very eclectic. We have great restaurants, but also a lot of us have families or are older. I'm 42. So it's not loud after 10 o'clock. Like we've moved away from Wrigleyville where the Cubs play and everybody, is in their mid-20s and don't know what real life is, to, you just find your bubble.
Mhm.
And I think once you find it, you're set. And if you never find it, then you probably just weren't meant to be here. And I'm not meaning that in a gatekeeping way at all, but then this probably isn't for you, because we are definitely a different breed.
Okay, so many things again. So we'll have to talk about what your environment is in human design
Mm.
because I wonder if that aligns with Chicago
Mm.
area you're in. I grew up in Toronto, but I really grew up in Mississauga, but I would call it Toronto. I did it for other people's sake. Like they for a long time they wouldn't have heard of Mississauga because
Mhm.
when I was there in the 80s, there was 45,000 people, and I think it's like 2 million now. So it's one of the
Wow.
fastest growing cities ever in Canada, at least.
Mm.
So I don't think I need to provide that for context anymore, but it really is that same thing. And then just your comment about your bubble, like I lived in Bermuda for 5 years, and
Wow.
we literally took the same path all the time. So like
Mhm.
if you went to Dockyard or you went to St. George's, the two tips of the island, that was like a trek. And you could walk the island in 8 hours. Like they'd have the annual,
Oh, wow.
but we would still only go to Dockyard twice a year. Like
Yeah.
there's no reason to go. So in a place so small, it's so
Yeah.
true, right. And of course with Chicago, you got so many things that are probably not that far away. And if
No.
you've nailed the transportation systems. You're not worrying about a car and paying insurance. Like it's just a different way to live, and it's kind of awesome. So that's cool.
Yeah, it definitely, and I didn't realize how different it was until I go home to Arizona, and my sister-in-law has got 4 kids. Everything in Arizona is spread out, so everybody drives. There are really no Lyfts or cabs or Ubers. You barely see a bus on the freeway. Like, you don't see any transportation. They have a light rail now they're very proud of, and it goes one way for, like, 10 stops. Um, and I just forget that I naturally, on average, give myself an hour to get anywhere, and that's just part of my repertoire. I go to the grocery store, I walk. So I purposely bring my bags and put my groceries in my bags and not a cart or a, a hand carrier, because I don't want to accidentally bring too much that I can't carry. So again, it's this, and it is funny. Like, I don't realize that that is so different. Or when I tell people that, there's like, an hour, you have to budget for it. Like, yeah, like but it's not traffic. It's walking to an L. It's sitting in an L. It's sitting in like, it's not like I'm sitting in, like, my partner who sits in, bumper to bumper traffic because he goes all the way out to the burbs for work, an hour and a half a day. That I would lose my ever loving mind. But I've got my AirPods in, I've got my book. Like, I just make use of that time in other ways, except besides being like, like trying to be where I need to be in a big old rush.
That's interesting. Yeah, I keep trying to be on early. I was always the
I'm
guy that showed up like
I'm
right
always early. I even try to be on time, like right on time, and I'm still 15 minutes early. I can't not be early.
So
I don't know
what
how
is your
people do it.
environment in your design?
Now that you're asking that, that is actually one area I haven't spent a lot. I want to say mountains.
Hmm.
Um,
I have your body graph here. I'll just
oh yeah, tell me because that's an area I haven't spent. I know that I am. Oh, I had my 4 arrows on my wall the other day. Um,
I don't actually have your
do
design
you?
here.
Do you
No, I don't think you necessarily want to go sharing your birth information. You want to just drop it in the chat there, and I'll
want
pop it up.
yeah.
But while you're doing that, because there's a chat thing in there, you probably can see it.
Yeah.
I'm Valleys, right? And once I heard that and read about that, I was like, oh, I totally get it. Like if I stay home too long with my family and they're all kind of like watching movies and like all comfortable, but there's
Yeah,
nothing,
yeah.
no buzz, I get so uh, antsy, aggravated, and so I'll even just go
That's the
down the
first time I
street
was
to the
born.
pub and buy a coffee just to be there with other people buzzing around, and it actually relaxes me. And so I'll just take my iPad there and sit there, and it's just the activity of other people that
Yeah,
I. It's weird.
I work 6:59. I work better and I've always been this way of um I work better with music on, or I always have the TV on if I'm doing something like a movie on in the background, or if I really want to sit and concentrate on something. When I was writing my book in 2020, there was one coffee shop. We did lockdown pretty crazy here in Chicago, but there was one or two coffee shops down the street with me that had outdoor seating, and I would purposely go there because I knew I only had a pocket of time to write my book each week. And
Hmm.
I knew if I went there, I wouldn't naturally get distracted by, oh, I see, mess behind me or whatever. I feel like, nope, this is my dedicated time. And then it would give me an excuse to kind of look around and like get outside and kind of, people watch for a bit, but then focus right back. So I'm the exact same with that. And I don't know if that's a
Well, let's find out.
neurodiverse thing or, just another part of my beautiful brain.
Well, yeah, yeah, we can talk about all this stuff. I'm looking forward to it. I think our brains work very similarly. I think it'll be interesting to see the similarities. Um, uh, Canada and the States do their dates
Oh, sorry,
backwards.
month first.
Month first? Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-mm, mm-mm. It's like all cryptic. I just put mine out there. I don't care. But I don't want to assume that other people realize that.
I mean, I already said my age, so people can at least get the year.
Yeah. Okay. So let's see. And then, hey, I'm gonna. All right, you're in Chicago. I'm gonna be where you were born in 2 weeks. So
Ooh, I'm
for
actually from a.
for for 2 days, and then I'm driving with a friend to the Human Design Conference in Santa Fe. So I'm using Denver as a hub, seeing my old
Yeah,
friend who was born a day and a time zone apart from me. And so our
that's
designs are
sweet.
so similar. And when we talk,
Yeah.
we just have so many things in common. So
I'm actually from a small town. Well, it's not small anymore. Small anymore. Small town outside of Boulder, Colorado, just east of Boulder, called Louisville. But
okay,
my parents were both born and raised Denver, right? So we go back often. I love Santa Fe. Santa Fe is it's a great spot.
is it? Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
gonna be there second week of September. I'm assuming it's still gonna be hot. I haven't even looked at the weather. I'm assuming it's dry and hot.
Warmer. I mean, it'd be like probably 80s.
Okay, that's hot. Okay.
It gets chilly in the evenings in Santa Fe. It's like Colorado. Probably could drop like 20, 30 degrees in the evening. So layers. I always tell people if they're traveling to Denver or anywhere near there that time, layers.
Okay, you ready? So you're
Yeah,
passive mountains. So
I
you had
was right.
right. So if you want, I'll read you like the app I use a lot lately is Neutrino Design, and it's definitely turning out to be pretty
Ooh,
popular. It
that's
gives
a
you a
new
lot.
one.
Oh yeah, it's rich with info too, like really really rich. But so here's your. Let me see if this resonates for you. Passive mountains. You feel comfortable looking at things from a certain distance,
Mhm.
not just physically, but also in a social aspect. You like high rise buildings, skyscrapers, and working in tall office buildings. Even though it's called mountains, it doesn't at all mean that you need to live in the mountains, although periodic trips there have a healing effect on you. If you live in an urban environment, it's better for you to choose an apartment or office in a high-rise building. You want to be inaccessible to the outside while still having the opportunity to join the world below at will. You really enjoy looking out the window while flying on a plane. Children with this environment climb trees, make houses in their crowns, which I don't know what that means, sit on windowsills and climb roofs, sleep on top of a bunk bed or on the second shelf in a train compartment. Mountains are rarefied air, so people with this environment often lead a lifestyle associated with oxygen starvation. For example, they start smoking and get high from it. They practice holding their breath. They can engage in deep sea diving underwater mountains from above. Because your environment is passive mountains, you prefer keeping your distance and observing the world below without having much influence. So I will say that this is actually my wife's, and
Mm.
transference. So when you're in your not self, is
Mhm.
caves. And she made a comment the other day. She's like, but I also, because I was talking about caves and how people with caves, I've been experimenting on friends where that have caves. I'll get them to pick a location in a restaurant, like pick the table, and then I'll ask them
Mm.
why did you pick that table, and they'd be like, oh, I don't know, I just always come here. I'm like, is it because you can see all the exits from where you're sitting? And they'll go like, yep, that's actually why. They didn't know that's why. So
That's what I totally do too.
right? And so my wife was like,
Yeah.
"It's me," and but I said, "But that's when you feel like that's when you're in your not self. That's when you're, when you're not
That's when
feeling."
I don't want to be social anymore and I want to try to find the quick exit.
Isn't that interesting? So
I again, human design, as even though I've been in it for a while, I I love that it still gives me goosebumps and it's still just like, yeah, spot on. Like nothing about that. I was like, nope. Like mine, as I'm laughing because I'm on the second floor of my building. My office has a window, and all I see is trees and the sky and the dog, like the dog walkers across the street. And yeah, I mean, and also mountains completely. I think that's why Chicago, I love it so much because I have access to almost everything. At least now, I mean, if I want to rent a car or my partner drives, we fly, but I'm close access to everything. I'm 10 minutes away from the lakefront. I have water there. Mountains are kind of far, but it's still, I have the Denver aspect of that. But yeah, it definitely, that all completely spot on.
crazy. So I have a buddy who lives in Missouri, and he's a grandfather. So he's very much like, I'm going to live in Missouri because that's where my kids are, that's where my grandkids
Mm.
are. But he smokes all the time, and once I learned about mountains and started reading it, it really is, he feels like he can think clearer when he smokes. But he also loves scuba diving. And I was
I've
like, well, where do
always
you go
wanted to
scuba
try it.
diving? Yeah. So it's the oxygen deprivation. You actually will think more clearly when you're deprived of oxygen, which is why smoking is something that is common for mountain people. And so he said, and he would describe his scuba diving like he's just like the colors are different, it's more vibrant. Like I can't explain it, and I was like,
Mm.
I can. You got a mountain, so
I don't smoke, but I definitely, I mean, I can see why I love Colorado so much. The fact
fine.
of
I'm not
like,
suggesting you start smoking, but
no, I know.
it is that
But
oxygen to find safe ways to do that don't harm your
yeah,
body,
yeah, 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 yeah.
right?
But yeah, I can definitely see the correlation though of just like how, yeah, Colorado is one of my more grounded spaces that I love coming back to. And so I could definitely see that being mile high. And yeah, that's, I love it. That's so cool.
Well, and you're a 6'2", so
Hmm. And the
and
hermit with the caves, and yeah.
you were born in a place with mountains, so that would have
Mhm.
been comfy and familiar. And then you've left there and found a new place, but you're going through these sort of three stages in your life too, right? And at
Well, in
42,
every place that I have moved to since I've lived, so I lived in Arizona, then I lived in Seattle, and then quick stint back in Denver, and then here in Chicago. Even in Seattle, that was one of the things I absolutely loved about Seattle is that again, big city, big for me at the time at 19,
still
but
is pretty.
also lakefront, obviously huge mountain views, and I absolutely adored it there, and I honestly thought I was going to spend the rest of my life there, but the universe had another plan, which is great because now I've gone back and it's just not the same, for multiple
Mhm.
reasons. But yeah, that's definitely always been an attraction to me of being able to know I have access to those different environments.
Hmm. Okay, let's shift gears.
Yeah.
You're an author, so
Mhm.
what's the name of your book or books?
So book is called She Profits. And I wrote it in 2020, which, you know, was something to do. I wasn't expecting to write it in 2020, but I think I actually I signed the contracts right before lockdown, and it was like, okay, well now I've got lots of time. Uh, and I wanted to write it. So it's based off of a signature talk that I did over 250 times from 2017 till 2020. Now the talk has shifted, but the foundational points are still there for the most part. And what I mean by that is it's more the framework, and I've expanded now with utilizing more of the human design aspect of things like that. But it's called She Profits, and the subtitle is the outrageously simple 5-point entrepreneurial profit plan. And the term profit, I always love to expand on that, is about mental, emotional, and financial profitability, and what you can do to basically, I call it kind of almost the gateway drug to human design. It gets you comfortable just asking yourself, what do I want? And exploring the times of days when you have the most energy, and what fills you up, what does it, and kind of get you used to that inner gauge of, oh yeah, this doesn't feel good, so I'm not going to do that right now. So it walks you through kind of those 5 different points that I feel a lot of us need to stay connected to, or at least come back to as often as possible, that we tend to leave to the side, especially as we get kind of in a groove in entrepreneurship or in a slump with entrepreneurship. Um, so yeah, it has stories from myself, very personal stories about myself. It has stories from my clients, because I wanted it to be not only inspirational but action motivated. So it has action steps that you can take, or space for you to journal inside of the book of, I ask you maybe some exploratory questions. Um, so it was really something that I'm proud of. It's always interesting when you do something that's I don't know why I want to say stake worthy, but like you put like your stake at the ground, like I am an author, and how I have evolved since writing that book. But like I said, there's still pieces of the book that resonate still with me. And now the kind of like possible aha is maybe writing an updated version and an extended version, kind of sprinkling in more of what I have now discovered and continue to utilize by understanding and continuing to learn through human design.
Okay, well, projector, I invite you to write that second, because that was actually going to be in the second edition. So, and it sounds like there's already a version 2 in you. So I invite
Yeah, it's
consider it.
thank you. Thank you. And I appreciate that, because it's bubbling as a new talk. Um, and then from there, I'm sure that talk will easily, just like it had before, translate into a book format. So I'm excited to kind of see if this turns into some sort of a continuing series. Who knows?
Cool. Hmm. Um. Now I'm going to change topics again here. It's funny, but yesterday I had to take my car in for service, and so I was sitting in their showroom for 4 hours because I I went there and didn't have a ride. And
Right.
so the session I had with you when you did a reading for me, I think it was 3 months ago now. So time flies,
Yeah, it
and I
does.
finally kind of returned to the recording, and I've had like 8 or 9 readings now, and each one I return back. It's like I've just completely missed parts of it, right? I just couldn't take it all in. And so yesterday there was all sorts of things clicking, and it was almost like the timing of it yesterday was particularly perfect. Um,
Mm.
Perfectionism has been something that's been on my mind for a while, and I've been working with another analyst, Leanne Wolf, and she caught my attention a couple months ago talking about the difference. Like instead of seeking perfectionism, it's excellencism. Like just improve 1% every day. And I sat with
Mm.
and walked with that several times. I go on my little walkabouts with mushrooms for 6 hours and like cold.
Love it, love it.
And I was like, holy cow, what is perfection? Like, I can't even define what it is.
Mm.
Usually other people are defining it, but that target keeps moving too. So, like
Mm.
Michael Phelps is the perfect swimmer. There will still be someone that comes along whose body is even more just
Mhm.
designed that way and has a coach that learned from Phelps, like, so that, like, perfection keeps moving.
Right. Yeah.
Excellencism is just a an intent to keep showing up better every day. And to me, that's what
Mm.
human design helps us do, right? Is just like help you find that, like, how can I be most excellent? And
Mhm.
so, yeah, when you were in the video, it just kind of like popped out and you said, like, I forget the exact words, but like, you're not a perfectionist, you're a procrastinator. Love you. And so I was like, and I was like, oh, yeah, there it is again. Because I ran into it with my daughter last night. She's a manifester, and she had a bunch of
My
stuff
son
going
is
on.
too.
Yeah, and she was just delaying on this decision for 5 days, and procrastinating and turning the heat up, and to the point where she was
Mm.
becoming not fun to be around because she had built
Mm.
it up in her mind, right? And then that came
Mhm.
along, and I was like, hit me like a, it was like that message wasn't for me. That was for me
Right.
to, make sure I have a chat with her today about just like giving herself some slack and grace, because
Yeah.
she's worked herself up into a bit of a lather, and it's not necessary. So the
Yeah.
timing of that was like really, really cool. And then I wake up this morning and you had referenced my thing, and I was just like, oh, okay, that kind of legs. So
Yeah, that's and I love that you posted that because in my world, I mentioned this, I've talked about this in my Instagram stories, so I don't even know if it's there anymore. But uh I have been doing some work for myself on re-examining the words that I used a lot in my talks, in my posts, and really understanding how those words translate, especially coming from, a pale person of privilege and capitalism and all those things, in the way that I was trained to, scare factor and, scarcity, like, oh, only 5 spots left. And, what would your life look like? And yada, yada, yada. And one of those words was procrastination. And it's come up a couple of times with different people
mhm,
about their struggle with it. And the more that I sat with it, especially again, like learning more and exploring with human design, the more that I, one, am completely ashamed of how I use that word, because I used to use it in my talk as a guilt factor for you losing money in your productivity. Because back in the day, my whole line was like, being productive, which I don't even really like that word anymore, or know what that word is. Um, but I had this exercise where I was like, and I talked about how there's unconscious and conscious procrastination. I won't even go into that. But anyway, I would do this exercise where I would say, okay, look at last week, and I want you to write down how many hours you spent procrastinating. And then I want you to times that by how much you charge an hour for a client. And that's how much money you're missing out. And even as I'm saying that, my stomach is just like, oh, why did you do that? And the more, as I said, that I've sat with it, the more now I like to use, I don't even like to use procrastination, but I like to show others and myself that that is probably an internal ping for you to wait it out. Like, there's more information, there's something that's settling that you can't see. There's always so much going on in the background that we are never aware of, that we need to give it time. Like we talked about before I popped down, like glitter settling in a jar. My son has a calm down jar and he shakes it and he sits there and takes deep breaths until all of the glitter has settled. And I use that visual a lot with my clients because we are, we want to get it, we want to go. And the thing is we're just not ready yet. And there's a difference. And also, so there's like two sides. So there's one, if you're just delaying making a decision or delaying taking a piece of action, I encourage you to just let that pause happen and to give yourself grace, to your point. The other part where people are like, well, I just work better, 2 hours before the deadline is due. I can't live like that. I was like, well, do you do it well? Like, are people, or do you do it like to a point to where you feel like that's your best work and people, are happy with what you do? 9 times out of 10, they're like, yeah, but that's not how I should work. No, but
mhm,
that's how you do work. So honor the fact that, you know, 2 hours before this is due, you're going to have to hunker down and get it done.
mhm.
So just save space and time for that, the 2 hours for it. Maybe give yourself 6 just in cases. But up to that, stop saying, I should do this done, because what you're doing is you're pulling time and energy from things that you could master or do or put action into along the way. So not only are you procrastinating, quote unquote, on this thing, you're putting other things on the shelf as well for something that you know you can do really well in 2 hours.
Mhm.
But we're not taught that. We're taught that it has to be in a certain, from school on up, that we need to have, things done early and, yada, yada. Not all of us work that way. And I think it's, again, time that we really honor the way that we work. And instead of having people berate us for it or tell us that we need to change it, so that's way, you can be more financially profitable, understand for yourself what is the mental and emotional profitability first, because that's what's going to create the financial afterwards. And if it's really the 2 hours before, then fucking honor it and rock the rest of your week before that 2 hours before.
Yeah.
It's a process, right? It's not like somebody's going to hear this and go, oh, thanks, Mel, I'm now cured. Like, that guilt factor is deep, and it comes with a lot of reassurance and a lot of other, development facts and all the things. But if you were looking for your sign of, yeah, I do work better that way, you're welcome. Like,
Yeah.
start honoring that.
So interesting. So, you said we were taught that. I'd replace, because we're talking about choosing your words. We were conditioned that way. And then the other
Love
word you
that.
said is you said should, right? So I'm working
Yeah.
on a book myself, and um, there's a whole section called "Don't Should Me, Bro," and it's basically should is someone else
Yeah.
saying like you should do this because it worked for me, or because I care
Yeah.
about you and it worked for me, but that doesn't mean it
Yeah.
works for you. And
Yeah.
like, I'm 51 and I've just been shoulded my whole life and used to listen. So now should
Yeah.
is a force field. As soon as I hear should, it's like, er, I'm going to listen
A
to what you
save.
said. I'm going to
Yeah.
thank you for it. I might even take something from it, but I am definitely not going to do it because you want me to do it, because
Yeah.
that's, where that's coming from. I don't know the backstory or the history, and it's also,
Yeah.
you're just different. So yeah. Are you familiar with the Four Agreements? I actually haven't read the book. I found a short version because I'm a 3.5 MG, but the
I was like, a short version is.
it's not a one pager, but it like
Is
spoke to me
it
so
really?
clearly. Oh yeah, yeah. And
Yeah,
it's like,
it's been a hot minute since I've read it. But I am familiar with it. Yeah.
well, like be impeccable with your word, right? Like that's one of the
Yeah.
four. And it's like choosing the right words. And so I find I've been like practicing that for about a year. Like I will pause for a second and just think about the word I
Mm.
use, knowing that
Hmm.
it's packed with meaning. And but I also realize like sometimes I'll say, "Oh, that's awesome," and I was calling things awesome for 20 years, and so nobody believed me that it was awesome because everything was awesome,
Mm.
right? So
Yeah.
one thing I've noticed
I
with
was.
a lot. Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just saying. I went through kind of a similar thing with a friend of mine, about using the word okay when somebody asks how you are. So
Mm,
she asked me how I was, and I said, oh, I'm okay. Like, high inflection, like, oh, okay, because I was okay.
mm,
And after about, a couple of minutes of conversation, she circled back. She's like, well, why are you just okay? Is everything okay? I'm like, when did we make okay? Like, there are some okays where you're just like, I'm okay. Like, it just depends on how you present it. But there are so many words that we just naturally connect to a certain emotion, a certain thing, and whatever. And instead of really going, oh, okay, like, to your point, let me think about how, for her, how I said it. She said it with an upward inflection. She's engaged, they're doing all these things. If they wanted to talk about it, then, it's one of those things. But I think it's understanding where does that word come from, but also knowing the energy of the room, or just taking a minute to check in on how that word is feeling or how that word sits.
mhm,
Another one that I talk about a lot with my clients that I've been trying to help create more definitions of is the word consistency.
mhm,
Consistency in business, especially, is about, routine, same thing every day. You have to consistently post, you have to consistently do this. And I now look at the word consistency for me, and if it applies to somebody else, to them as well. of when I choose to step in or when I choose to engage, I have the consistency of the quality of my energy when I choose to do so. When I choose to share on social media, the consistency for me is the quality of what I share and the value of what I share. It's not how many times a day, right? And when I kind of reframe that for people, they all of a sudden just go, "Oh, well, that's all of a sudden that's just a lot more free." Like, "Oh, I don't have to your point, or you should have to, same day, do that to appease some analytic god to hopefully that something goes viral and your entire life is fixed." Like, it's not, it's that's so leaving it up to somebody else's hands that you have no control over. What you have control over, quote unquote, is the quality of what you share. So if you feel called to share up the yin yang.
Mhm.
But if you don't feel called to share, or if you're just trying to like force things up so you can, appease the analytic gods, then that's not really serving anyone except for, some bot that is not even going to like appreciate it.
Yeah. So many things there. To me, social media is just farts in the wind. Like basically, you sniff it as it goes by, right? Like, and
Right.
it's, um, this other fella years ago, Andrew was talking about Twitter, and he just said like it's millions of people talking, nobody listening, and he nailed it like a decade ago for me. And so, but I still get caught up on it because I should in my business promote what we have, right? But we're really starting to look at how much energy we put into, if you're posting 20 times a day, if the main message is one out of those 20, people will
Yeah.
miss it because they'll just be like, oh, here comes another one with the same branded template and color scheme. And like it just becomes so
Right.
familiar that you just don't even see it, right? It's just,
Yeah.
and yeah, it just loses
And
its.
they're bite sizable. To me, they're not. And I've spent all of this year or the past year really examining and reestablishing my relationship with social media. And I'm like 99.9% away from Instagram now is just a thing. I really want to focus on sharing my verbal dumps on YouTube and having a really awesome newsletter and having that on top of, podcasts and things like that to like share my message and to be accessible to people. But I have found more and more like when people ask me who do I follow on Instagram or why do I like following them? It's mostly because they just relate to me at some point and so I feel seen, but that never hardly ever encourages an action step for me. Like I and I think that's what social media is turning into more now is a really great place to disassociate. That is why at 42 I love TikTok and that's my place to play because I have no context of me there. My business has been on a virtual platform since 2013. So it's primarily Facebook and Instagram. So if you really wanted to, especially if you're an OG or follower of me on Instagram, you have so much context on me that it almost becomes stifling because I feel like I can't really be myself. I can in the stories because they disappear, but posts, I'm like, that's forever.
Yeah.
Um, so when TikTok came up, I was really hesitant and I just was there to stalk people because the videos made me laugh because it was COVID and lockdown and I loved it. And then I started playing around with it and I have started doing a TikTok vlog of just documenting my journey and refinding my mojo for my business because I am at the end of, but am currently in a hallway in what I want to do and my energy with my business and my connection to my business, which we all go through. And I just felt more comfortable doing it on TikTok. I don't care about the views or follows. I just like that I have a space where my family doesn't follow me, hardly my friends follow me, and I can just, be this. People are meeting me where I'm at right now, and there's something very freeing about that. But I think definitely with, and I closed Twitter a long time ago. That just was not healthy for me, but Instagram now has definitely just become one of those spaces where I like to be in for stories every now and then or share other people's genius because it made me laugh and they deserve the credit. But I think more and more, especially as we're moving into 2027 and the shifts that we're going to be having in 2027, systems like social media are not going to be the mainframe that they were to build your business like
Hmm.
they even were 2-3 years ago.
Yeah. Hmm. As soon as you said 2027, I was thinking about your word earlier too. You were talking about lemmings. Rob always talked about sheep and wolves, but I thought it was interesting that you put your own spin in it, like lemmings just following each other off a cliff, right? Isn't that the bird?
That was one of my favorite games. Like, let's go. And then you just like all it was like on the old Mac.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, a whole bunch of people just like marching towards the cliff and whoo, right? That's
Yep.
what's going on. So interesting. The other thing I want to come back to just for a second, you're talking about like just saying okay, and I really, really always try not to just answer with a single word, but I understand. I think why it's 2 syllables. It's really easy, but as soon as you said that, I was reminded again in Bermuda. But in Bermuda, when you walk by Bermudians and you know them, they just point at each other and go safe. Like they basically are answering each other's question. So instead of okay, it's safe. And I guess like to
Hmm.
me, it was always like I'm safe, I'm okay.
Hmm.
And even in Bermuda, everybody's on scooters. As you drive by, if you know the person, there's just you're just driving and you just go like this. You put your finger out, and that's just like acknowledging the other person. How you doing?
Yeah.
Safe. And that's all they'll say. And
Yeah.
it became like part of my vocabulary for years. It's 18 years in the past now, but I just that's the word they use there, and I
Hmm.
think it's the same thing. Like okay means I'm safe right now. Like you don't have to worry about
Yeah.
me, or I think that's kind of what it's at because we're too busy to actually see how we're doing. Like no one actually
Yeah.
wants to say. So I just try to say like I'm actually pretty frustrated today, and I'll just wait to see if and
If there's any
90%
follow up, yeah.
there's nothing. They don't even
Yeah.
respond to it. So I'm like, well, okay, so yeah, I'm gonna go put my energy somewhere else. If they
Right.
care to respond to that, that tells me where we're at. So
Yeah, I've tried to using I'm good as like the I'm good.
mhm,
Um, I do like to try to use more words of how I'm actually feeling. Okay is a huge is a I'm just gonna call it a great word in my household with my son being autistic. Okay, we had a very rough year last year in middle school, and okay was like the goalpost. Like if he had an okay day, we were set and we celebrated that he had an okay day. And I think that's for me where that started to kind of redefine itself. It's like, well, no, it's okay to be celebrated because you don't know where a person has come from to be okay.
mhm,
So it is one of those words of like it, I don't think any word has just a singular context or meaning, but we have started to do that of just being, how are you? I'm fine. How are you? I'm fine. It's like that. Whereas I think it was the Italian job where fine means freaked out, insecure, neurotic, and I always forget what the E is. Um, but it's like that's just the different. It's like, well, what does fine mean? So I think it is definitely so, and I love that you do that, and I think that's hopefully, that encourages other people to be like, "No, you don't have to tell people your whole life story, or if you don't feel comfortable really expressing the emotions that you're feeling right now, find your safe word."
mhm.
But
Safe word.
what is but what is that? Like, why do you just naturally say that? I don't know. Yeah.
Well, and I'm not a projector, but I was just reminded like your signature as a projector is success, right? Or
Mm.
reward. Like so
Mhm.
I wonder do you know how that feels? Like at the end of the day,
Hmm.
is today a successful day, right? Whereas mine is satisfaction. And
Affection, yeah.
it sounds like to me, as soon as I heard that word, I was like, that is a great day. It doesn't have to be like people are seeking happiness or, awesome and all these crazy words. But like if I'm
Mhm.
satisfied, that actually is the best day. It just feels natural. I'm quiet. I'm like the harmonies there, the balance in
Mhm.
all the highs and lows have kind of balanced into I'm satisfied. So um oh, so many things. I'm curious. So, what's your son's type? If it's okay, like, is he
He's
a
a manifester, and
manifester?
my partner's a projector.
What is the what is the manifester signature? I gotta remember that from my daughter. Actually,
Uh, Shocking. I have my books right near me. You would think I would know from my son. I don't.
I don't get manifestors. So
Like in general or just in your proximity?
they're my next one to kind of try to understand. Oh,
Let's see. So there,
peace.
what is that?
Yeah, it's peace for a manifester.
Yeah,
And
peace. There it is.
so I wonder, when you're talking about like being okay, I wonder, try that word, like peace. Does he feel peaceful? I wonder if that's what
Yeah,
he's looking for, right? So,
that's a great suggestion. And to just teach him, because one of the beautiful ways that he's wired is learning words that match emotions or how to describe emotions.
mhm,
Um, so it would be really cool actually to use that just to expand his vocabulary of, yes, he could still use okay, obviously. Um, but kind of using that check in that, like, are you at peace? Because I will tell you, I don't know how often that does happen with his, because he's got a lot of shit going on in his brain all the time. Really, what is feeling at peace for neurodiverse people? I don't know. I was actually thinking about the other day. I love to ask my friends really weird. I don't mean for them to be deep questions, but I have a couple of friends that I can just randomly text deep questions to. I guess they're deeper. And one of them the other day was, um, "Are you ever content?" And if,
mhm,
one answered yes, one answered no. And then we got to a really beautiful conversation of where that kind of came from and how they see uh, relief and relaxation is the same thing, which I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Um, but they asked me like what brought that on. And I realized that I was in my living room reading a book. I was hearing my son playing drums in the background. The windows were open, and I just took the deepest breath and realized that I haven't taken a deep breath in a really long time of just pure contentment. And
mhm.
having, kind of those emotions or that vernacular that gets either pushed aside or not used very often. So therefore kind of gets out of practice, recognizing those moments and be like, I'm content. Why am I, like, that's a great word. Like, content is a great word. And I don't use that very often because I'm either good or all right. Or, like, I don't know. We could probably go on a whole other tangent on loss of words and how people use different words. But circling back to my kiddo, I think using more of those words to your point for him of being like, there's another way to call that, which is you're at peace. I mean, let's figure out what at peace means to you. And that way we can use it in
Mhm.
a way that resonates.
Well, I wonder if the word content is a summary of those words. So if you're feeling successful, you're content. If you're satisfied, you're content. If you're at peace, you're content. So it's almost like it's
Yeah.
like the umbrella. And so then if you get specific with your design, you're like, okay, it sounds like you're content. Are you at peace? Like
Hmm.
if you can get that specific, maybe we learn some things about it.
Because I will
The other
say,
thing I
oh, sorry.
no, I was gonna. Well, no, I don't want to. I just there's something I want to circle back to. I want to talk about Gate 19. So, but you finish your thought.
Well, I was just gonna just talk really quickly about satisfaction and success. I know when I tell people what that satisfaction is their kind of key point, they almost relax because they also have the opportunity to look back and see when they've hit that instead of like, I haven't been successful. Like, what's commercially successful? It's like, well, that's not your key indicator. And the interesting thing for me was understanding what success means to me, because
Mhm.
before success was financial, goals, having my white goal board filled with, yes, I have this client, this thing, booked this, blah, blah, blah. Like to me, that was successful back in the day. And redefining that for myself now that I'm in a space of more flow, of being slower, of simpler, quote unquote, life, and letting go of those like capitalistic definitions of success for me And so it did take me a while to understand what success meant to me. And as,
Mhm.
as me, as a projector, as all the things, and then use that. But again, it's so easy to use those words and not really know what they mean to us, or if they triggered like a "Ooh" factor, like how can we just use a different word, or is there a way that we can actually find how to utilize that? Like yeah, I could go into a whole nother tangent on that. But to your point of knowing those words and understand that none of those words are bad, but if there's like this feeling like satisfaction, that's not good enough. I want to be successful. Well, the success comes from the satisfaction. So you get to satisfaction almost faster to some people, or some people see it in a progression of like satisfaction first, then success. So, yay, you hit it. So, where you're there, everything else is just like, it's awesome. Like it's very everything else falls into place. But it's with you're trying to go past that and push, to success or to another point that you think is showing you that you're on the right path. You've missed all the road signs, and now you're in some
Mhm.
weird side road to Jerome that you didn't even know existed.
Side road to Jerome. I haven't heard that one before. Um, I don't have your birth info in here, but can I pull your design up? Because there's a
Yeah,
couple
go
of
for
things
it.
that even if you say, like, because I'm always testing my
I haven't
understanding
been
of
read
things.
in a long time, so please.
Well, and I don't know if I'm qualified to read, but where? Well, that's interesting. It's not going to do that. Okay, so I'll have to do this. I'll share this screen. I'll pull up the Neutrino Design app, which is
Yeah,
one of
I'm
my
gonna look that
favorites.
up when we're out of here.
Also, humandesign.ai is really interesting.
Hmm,
Like the fellow Kyle that's made it with his team,
making a note of that.
they've actually put in Ra's teachings, like actually input that into the engine using Chat GPT, and you can ask it questions about your design and tell it to make suggestions and give you like things to try. Like it's really
Okay.
interesting. So let me. It's entire screen. Okay. So this is the Neutrino Design app.
Yep.
So you should be able to see it there.
Yeah, yeah.
And so a couple things, right? One, as you were talking, so gate. Let me just zoom in here. Oh, it's on my phone. So gate 41 is this gate of fantasy. And so when you were talking about success, I wonder, do you ever feel like you hit success or that window keeps moving? So I've spent a lot of time with
Mhm.
this gate, and like I really struggle with vision boards because I can dream really big and some of it's not realistic.
Right.
And I recognize now that comes from that gate.
Mm.
And then, of course, with gate 36, there's this gate of crisis. Like, if I'm bored, I will sabotage or blow stuff up because I'm like, boring. And I'll actually like kill my own success. And so I
Mm.
wonder if that resonates for you because you have that. I mean, you close this
It's
channel
my
off, I
only
don't remember
channel.
30.
Yeah.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear more about that channel. But the other thing I want to make sure I at least leave with you today is I have absolutely come to the conclusion that I would have been adult ADHD, neurodivergent. Like I think I've become very good at masking it.
Yeah.
And I think actually in the video yesterday when we were the reading that you gave to me, you basically agreed with what I was saying at the time. Like I didn't really connect the dots, but
Yeah.
so that gate 19, the more people I talk to, neurodivergence and all that stuff is really in that gate.
Mhm.
So you have it.
Mhm.
I'd be curious if your son has it
Mhm.
because that's an area of exploration, right? Is that seems to be the seed of a lot of this stuff, and I think the more we recognize it and don't label it with all these labels we put out, we just put like I think differently, and I
Mhm.
people are trying to condition me like don't do that, stop doing that. And as a 3-5, I mean, I think I'm here to basically tell people like fuck right
Yeah.
off, stop telling me
Pretty much.
what's wrong because when I've learned it and know it, I've experienced it.
Mhm.
I just didn't read it. I actually failed again and again and again until I found a way.
Mhm.
And so I feel like part of my job is a bit of a beacon for all the other people that are being told what to do and just being like, no, fuck you.
Yeah.
Like I'm like, thank goodness for this information where I can be like, this is that science of differentiation or permission to be myself.
Yeah.
And then the more I lean into that, the more things get easier. So
Well, and yeah, so my son does have gate 19 as well. And I'm a child of the 80s, so neurodiversity. I was coined dyslexic with developmental delays. Um, so as I'm getting older, the more that I'm like, yeah, there's definitely some neurodiverse spiciness there. And I, to your point as well, I've learned to code or mask really well. And that's actually
Mhm.
been part of my reprogramming for myself is to stop coding and masking. And that's been a very interesting process on many levels. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, I mean, to your point, so my incarnation cross is the left angle cross of confrontation. So I'm here to change leadership. I'm here to confront how things are done and show them that there's more than one way to skin a cat, and to try to change up these systematic ways that we've been so indoctrinated in or just haven't fixed because they're not quote unquote broken. Um,
Mhm.
but I would have to say yes, because, and I think this, I mean, I'm kind of processing this in the moment, but looking back on it as probably being in the neurodiverse camp and learning, I actually put it back to I have an older brother and three older boy cousins that I grew up with. And so being the only female identified inside of the group, I really learned how to I never wanted to look stupid, right? Because I'm the girl. So I, blah, blah, blah. So I really was diligent on making sure that I was up to date on all the things and not say anything unless I knew something for sure, and just absorbed information so that I could, repeat it back or what have you. And the more that I'm doing research, the more that's like, no, that's what neurodiverse people do to just like make sure they fit in the room. Um, but so to that point with success, quote unquote, I was that lemming. Like the reason why I'm so passionate about it now is because I was that lemming for the longest time. And
Mhm.
I prescribed to what was the idea of success, which was, you know, at the time promoting as a female entrepreneur, uh be like, oh no, I'm the boss bitch. I'm this, girl boss. I have now fly first class because my business. Now it's about sharing your lifestyle and showing people that you can have this too if you just hire me. And it's just like that was another point of, oh, so that is success. But when I looked at it on paper, it was like I was looking at somebody else's accomplishments because
Mhm.
they were just goals to me. They were just so somebody else could recognize, high projector, that I was good at my job, and I would take that in, but I always felt like that I had to keep doing it or else I wasn't going to prove that I was worthy. And so COVID, I think, was a blessing on so many levels to so many people, but for me it was definitely because all of my natural coping mechanisms were no longer available, and therefore turned to some unhealthy ones, but we are now fine from that. Um, but I think it really gave me that pause of just who the fuck am I? I've been doing this for, at the time, 11 years. I've hit all these accomplishments. Now, all those things that made me successful are no longer really available or to the capacity to which I'm accustomed to. What is success to me? And that's
Mhm.
honestly when I started just 100% giving up myself to my design and just starting to practice it without any ifs, ands, or buts. Just nope, this is really like this is gonna how I need to live my life because this is me
Mhm.
and I'm negating myself, which is not cool. Life's too short.
Yeah, I think I isn't it project Ross said projectors are the most conditioned
Yeah.
too. So you can be the biggest slaves
Yep.
to everyone else's conditioning,
We're
right?
usually
So
trained
good for
as
you.
generators, which I definitely was. I was
Yeah.
definitely trained as a generator. And the fact that we can't see, we always need to be self-assured. Like we need to see the reflection of ourselves and others to understand and really connect to who we are. We can't really find it on our own, quote unquote. And knowing that that wasn't a weakness of like, no, I'm not seeking out praises. Like I'm trying to like seek out compliments, it's just like, oh no, there's a reason why I light up and get energized in a room that I'm speaking in or in an energy that I align with because I see myself and then I need to take that in and know that is me. That's not some
Mhm.
projection, no pun intended, of me that they've convoluted. they see me. So I need to hear that and really let that sink in, because I'm never really going to see that for myself. So I need to use that as a beautiful resource, not as like a dopamine hit and then me trying to search it on my own naturally, which is not going to really happen.
Hmm. Um, I want to play a game.
Yeah.
Okay. So, because I keep collecting information, and there's certain things in your design that I have as well, and so I just want to test some things with
Ooh,
you.
okay.
So you got the Gate
Mhm.
46, and I have definitely in recent weeks it's come very clear that that has all sorts of depth and weight. But it definitely seems to be a gate of integrity. Like you
Mm.
will take the high road even if it hurts. I wonder if that resonates for you because and with some folks I've been talking to, like one fellow in particular from Belgium that I was talking to the other day, he was like, once he saw that I had it in my design and personality, he's like, okay, I trust you. Like that, he was just immediately like, it was
Mm.
implicit trust. And my wife and I have it, and we basically put up with some shit sometimes where it's just like, we're just going to stay the course. This is the right thing to do. It's going to hurt. It's going to suck. Everyone's going to tell us we're crazy, but we're just going to at least see it through.
Mhm.
But it comes from a place of integrity, and we can't just do what other people might be willing to lower themselves to, right?
Mhm.
That seems to be right there in that 46.
Yeah,
Um,
that definitely resonates. And I would say, it's always interesting when you have a channel from an undefined center, because I have found just in working with clients and myself that sometimes when there's a gate coming off of it, that it sometimes gives us a little bit more, not excuse, but we tend to try to act from that undefined space as a defined space. And so for myself, that's where the people pleasing came in, and that identity that I gave to others and I didn't have for myself. And that's where those decisions were coming from for me, of being that higher up of like, oh, well, I need to come, I need to prove this, or they said I'm this person, so I need to say yes to this in order to like maintain that identity. Um,
yeah,
and now that I now know that, and know where that not self comes from, and having those kind of not self check-in questions, it's just more of like, no, no, now, yes, to your point, I always say yes to things where I just know that is out of always a highest good for myself or for someone else. And when I say something, when I say I'm going to be there for you or do something, even when I say I don't have the capacity for it right now, that is always coming from a place of integrity and of my best self. It's no longer coming from I want to say no, but I'm going to say yes because I think I'm this person. And if I say no, I'm not this person anymore.
but yeah, it's like it's mechanical. Like you
Mhm.
can't actually fight it, right?
Right.
It's different than like you have integrity, but it's not built into your DNA. But in your case, it's
Yeah.
there. Like
Yeah.
it's just kind of stuck with
Yeah.
it. So
Damn it.
I have a gate that I'll ask you about maybe when we're done and not recording because it's a little too spicy. But we'll move on to gate 26. So that to me seems to be it's a gate of selling.
Mm.
So you've got that in your conscious. So and it's not about being a salesperson.
Mm-mm.
It's like you can sell sand to someone in the desert, but you can also sell a concept.
Mhm.
Like, does that ring true to you that you can sell concepts and it's heard like you can sell concepts with ease? Does
Mm.
that
I
for you?
Yes, as long as again, as a projector, I'm waiting to be invited to share that
Mhm.
concept. Um,
Totally.
because back in the day, I would just be at the ready to share my solution,
Mhm.
to share, like to find my end so I could get that client, so I could hit them, yada yada yada. And the older I get, one, and the deeper, more connected I am to my design and waiting for that invitation, the more I realize how different it is when I wait for somebody to ask for my feedback, my opinion, or give me the permission to ask exploratory questions, um, as opposed to me seeing it. Because as a projector, as all the things I see it, it's right there, but I can't tell you it really because either I haven't been invited or it's just not, it's my solution. So that's why as a guide, as a projector, I need to see it and then ask questions to see how do you get there or what do you see it like, to give you a little bit more of that space to find it for yourself in your own way, because it might look different but it's still kind of the same picture, if that makes sense. um
Mhm.
so yes, it is very easy for me to quote unquote sell when it's the right person, the right room, and I have the invitation to do so. When I
Mhm.
don't, it does not. I get a lot of maybes, or I get a lot of huh. And then I shit you not, it usually takes about a year and a half for them to circle back and be like, you know that thing? Let's talk more about that. So yeah, it is one of those things of like, people are always not always, but I do get often people going, how why did you ask that? Like, how did you even know that? Even with my oracle card readings. And it's more of just like, it's trusting, because I have an invitation. It's trusting that I have not only the connection, but also the gate to do so, of like, here's the
Mhm.
message, here's the thing.
Yeah, well, you're years into the experiment, right? So it's even as you were saying all that. So again, you got that gate of integrity.
Hmm.
So if it's coming from a you're like, oh, I should do this, which there's that
Yeah.
should, it's not going to be
Yeah.
received, right? And so, but if because you've got that integrity, I think people can smell it. So like if it's not coming from you from an like they can just tell
Yeah.
from your aura. And
Well,
they're like,
projectors
it's
have the one of the stronger auras, so yeah, and I have to say that is one of my absolute favorite compliments, is when people are like, I just love your energy. I'm like, thank you. Like, I love
yeah.
that compliment. Like, it's you, yeah, it's one of the best, because it's
Because you're usually feeding off others' energy,
yeah.
actually, right? Like it's not the nicest term, but like an energy vampire is kind of how I describe
Well,
some
and
projectors,
yeah,
especially ones, right? They can be brutal.
well, yeah,
So,
especially as open as I am. I'm a sponge, and people, I used to equate that as being a extroverted introvert. Because people, when they meet me when I'm speaking or in a room and it's the right energy, frequency, all those things, that I'm in it to win it. People are always like, "Oh, you're so energetic," or "You're so you must be an extrovert." And I'm like, nay, nay, because when I go, like, my partner saw me speak for the first time. I did my first in person workshop in 2 years, and it was just like chef's kiss. Like, it reminded me how much I love doing this. And we had to drive about an hour and a half outside of the city. And on the drive home, this man knows me so well as a fellow projector. Not only did he make me a plate of snacks, he turned off the radio and we just sat in silence the whole hour, because he knew I had to just like turn off everything, because I absorbed everything. And that's where I can tend to go too far, is because if I'm receiving somebody's kick ass energy, I could go and go and go and go and go and go and go. But as soon as they're out of the room or I hit my limit, I'm getting better as I get older about excusing myself before I've gone too far. Then it's literally 2 days I can't do squat. I need to just be my little hermit self and recover. So it's finding those ways for myself of how do I naturally hermit after things that I have had to learn through trial and error, of, giving myself that room to breathe.
yeah, well, there's that too in your profile too, right?
Yeah.
So, and then, when you talked about being younger with that open throat and then wanting to add
Oh
value,
yeah.
you were probably like speaking like just blah, even before you were finished
Oh
processing. You were like,
yeah.
I have
And I
add,
always
right?
came from
And
a
that's,
space of, I want to be seen, I want to be recognized, I want people to know how good I am. And I even
mhm.
journaled that at my first spiritual retreat. It was a pop-up question for me during one of our really deep meditations. I think we did a sound bath. Oh, we did. It was a sound bath with the skulls. Where actually I got this lovely lad Jasper. Um,
Yeah.
but it was after that this question came up, like, why do I feel the need to always be recognized? Like, where is that coming from? Because that was before I really knew human design and those not self-checking questions. Um, of why do I want to be heard or seen or whatever. And
Mhm.
again, having that on paper and just going, yeah, why am I like, it's so interesting to see how you have naturally conditioned yourself into things thinking that that is you.
Mhm.
Whether it's naturally or not. I mean, we can talk about nature, nurture, whole 9 yards. But when you really see yourself and start really seeing yourself as you and your strengths and the way that you communicate, you process, and realizing just those small things that you've just gone too far in and making those small shifts can make such a big difference. It's like, why doesn't everybody know this? Like, you're just right there. You don't even have to be as geeked out as we are. Like, I've had plenty of people had one reading and that has satiated them for years because they, to your
Mhm.
point, just keep going back to the recordings and different things pop up and they already have enough layers for them to start seeing those shifts. So it doesn't have to be a full-on missional journey if you don't really, feel called for it to be. But even just having that understanding of, yeah, that I can only work 2 to 4 hours a day. So fuck you with this, like, sleep is for the weak. Like, no. And yeah, so definitely catching myself with, again, all of the open centers that I have and being an emotional authority, understanding that a full body hell yes is not a full body hell yes in the moment.
Mhm.
It is a sleep on it. Again, those little things that have made such a shift in all areas of my life and my business.
Cool. Um, we gotta wrap it up in about 5-10
Yeah.
minutes here, but I want to. So I'm going to ask another really direct
Yeah.
question. Does your left ear ring at
Oh,
times?
all the time.
And it's the left ear
Not to
more
think
is
of
pronounced right.
maybe oh, now I have to think about it. I feel pressure if I'm really sitting and think about it. I feel pressure in my right ear, like I get these weird pressure wonks. That's a word.
Mhm.
And in my left ear, I'm pretty sure it's my left ear that rings.
Your left ear.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, because you're weird. So like the ear you're pointing at, I'm like, which one?
Uh,
But so gate 22 is the left ear because you got the defined solar plexus. To me, so I'll tell you why I'm coming to
yeah.
this. I have a defined spleen. I have the 5710, and without a doubt, my right ear is like listening for danger, and
Mm,
it's extra, 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 extra amplified on plant medicine. So if I'm on a cannabis edible or mushrooms, I can hear like beyond what people would call normal. Like I can
mm,
hear a block away people having a conversation. It's super weird and trippy. And so my understanding is 57 is listening in the now. So it's about present, like real, like where's the danger.
mhm.
I can't remember what 22 was like. It's not listening in the now. It's listening. I forget what it is, but it definitely seems to be, there's a ringing with that. So I don't know.
Interesting.
Thank you for helping validate that because I have
Yeah.
22 in my Chiron, so I've actually kind of got it, but it's nowhere near as pronounced as the right, which is, I have all the circuitry around the 57 and the 10 and the defined spleen, whereas I have an open solar plexus, and so to me it's like this
Well, yeah.
heavy duty, like it's just, and
Yeah.
I used to think it was tinnitus, how do you pronounce it,
Yeah.
but it's not. It's actually it only comes in those moments where I'm like, oh, something's up. And usually there's something is up. And I'm just so hyper attuned to it. I've talked about this in other things, but like I have come to realize that I really don't like taking phone calls for
I hate
years
phone
because I'd hold
calls.
the phone up to my left ear.
Yeah.
Well, I can't hear the truth from my left ear. So now I only take phone calls, especially
I
meetings where it's going to be a difficult conversation. I wear my AirPods because I can hear both.
do
And
the
I have now
same thing.
So your left ear needs and then so I usually ask people like, are you left-handed, right-handed? Which hand do you answer the phone
I'm
in? And
ambidextrous, so
then
I switch those.
yeah, so but it'd be interesting to experiment with talking with them, switching sides or putting in both because I can hear the finest nuance in someone's
Yeah.
voice, and because I've got the gate 13, I can just sit and listen.
Yeah.
I become this empath vacuum, and then I'll just wait, and I can hear like a tremor in their
Yeah.
voice, and then I'll ask a question, and then just the tears just like it's just like intense, right?
That's why
But I can hear it.
yeah, that's why that's probably a reason why I prefer using voice messaging instead of text messaging. I always
Mhm,
joke around, I was like, "Well, I'd much rather talk out loud than think through my thumbs." But I
mhm,
also love to hear others people's voices because so much can get lost in text. I use Voxer with my clients. My clients love it because they can just verbal dump to me and hear my verbal response back. And there's
Yeah.
something very comforting about that, even though it may not always be instantaneous, but knowing that they have that space to just word vomit. And then same, I can catch certain things and be like, I'm going to bring that up now. I'm going to bring that up later. Like recently, a client was just catching me up on her week. And she made some just really quick remark, like kind of funny joke of like, man, I can't wait till one day I appreciate the process of receiving what I want. And then she kept moving on. And that sat with me. And the next day we
Mhm.
had our sessions. She's like, I said, do you have anything you want to bring to space? She's like, not really. I'm like, great, because and we spent the
Yeah.
whole set, and she came upon realizations that she had no idea she was holding on to between looking at her
Mhm.
chart and be doing all those things. And it's true. Like if it's important, I have to have my AirPods in, or else I feel like I can't pay attention.
Mhm. Yeah, keep experiment that. And by the way, thank you for. I'd heard of Voxer, but until we did our thing, I'd never experienced
Yeah.
it. And I keep earmarking like I need to go back to that. Thankfully, Microsoft Teams and stuff now has like a quick. You can leave 1 minute
Oh,
voice
cool.
messages free to
Slack
it.
now has
That's
voice
my.
messages too. Go
It's
Slack.
so powerful for especially where we need that for our intuition,
Yeah.
like. So, but I'm taking it so far as I won't listen with just my left ear. I have to, and I've experimented that. I had someone leave me a voicemail on my phone, and the first time I listened to it, I had AirPods in,
Yeah.
and I was like, "Oh man, she sounds upset about this." Like I could hear her like clear her throat.
Yeah.
But when I listened again in the left side, I didn't hear it.
So
And then I went back and I'm like, "No,
fascinating.
it's definitely there." And
Yeah.
so, yeah,
I love it.
it's so this becomes a superpower, right? Like it's really, really, yeah, it's
Yeah.
cool. So I just keep so.
Actually, you're
Um,
giving me the encouragement to have a professional reading of my chart because it has been a long time. I've just been reading myself. And again, the insights that from all of the beautiful knowledge that you've picked up over the last couple of years, and the fact that is things are like, yeah, like what do I do with that? Like that's definitely encouraged me and given me the invitation to be like, it's time to have another reading and find somebody that and find somebody that I would want to do that with, because I know there's I have a lot of people in my repertoire. I'm sure you do too, but now that that's out there, I'd be like, hey, no, so what's going to come forward now? Who's the right resource? But we'll
well,
see.
and if you want, we can banter back and forth. Like I've done about 8 of them now, 9 of them, and I collect them like candy, and I return to them, and
Yeah,
each one there's like a little depth charge later that comes
yeah,
up. Based on what we're talking about, I would suggest you want to probably start exploring your variables or
yeah. I just
transformations,
started doing
right?
that actually. Yeah,
So my understanding is you actually, if you're going to step through it naturally, you actually go top left, bottom left, and you actually work through each one
yeah.
individually. Um, I'm being a MG35 and just in a hurry. I've kind of dabbled all over the place, but it makes sense to me now how you kind of step through them if you're going to kind of like really apply yourself.
Yeah.
It seems to be that is the prescribed. Oh, there's conditioning prescribed order, but like it seems to be a natural
Progression.
order for things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah,
Nice.
it's
Love
cool.
it.
Well, we probably should start wrapping up here, but I love this. Want to do it again
Yes,
sometime?
please. I mean, I'll see you next week when I get to do your meat sack.
Oh, is that already in the calendar?
Yeah,
Awesome.
I scheduled
Okay.
both. I wanted to make sure I had them both in.
Yeah. Okay.
The
Well, I
crowd's
gotta
gonna get
find
sick of
a.
me.
I don't think so. um. Okay. Well, is there anything else to? No, I think this is a good place
Love it.
to wrap it up. I need to go get some food, and I'm gonna do another one of these in a minute. So I
Yeah,
need to
go take your break
stamina.
and yeah, shake it
Yeah.
out. Cool.
Okay. Well, awesome. Thanks for
Thanks
chatting.
for having me. This is fun.
Cool. I'll see
All
you
right,
later.
see ya.
Bye.